Hi, and good afternoon. I'm Art delaCruz, the president and COO of Team Rubicon. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us today for our fourth Greyshirt chat. I'm joined by four remarkable teammates. I've got Kate Browne, who's joining from our technology team, Kevin Scully, who is a partner with Wipfl, and he was last seen executing his helping neighbors mission with his two boys in Wisconsin. Jonas Reynolds, who comes to us as a director of the territory teams out of Colorado, and Dennis Clancey, who has stood up a fairly new team that'll allow him to talk about and also has been doing things, as you know, for quite a while with Team Rubicon. I will let them tell more about themselves as we dive into it. But first, let me start by saying thank you from the bottom of our hearts collectively for everything that you've done. As you've seen, over the past few weeks, the things that you have done and the amazing things that Team Rubicon Greyshirts have helped to accomplish across this country, be it because of the pandemic or because of natural disasters, you have made an incredible difference and made this nation better and obviously served your country well. You'll hear some threads of amazing things that have been done in the course of 6 short weeks. We'll continue to leverage the 10 years that we've enjoyed together to do more into the future. But again, it all begins with you. So thank you so much for everything you've done. So the theme of our Greyshirt today is technology as an enabler. And in order to kind of get that discussion started, our hope is to start by sharing some of what we'd hope to set out to do in early 2020 as part of our mission. And it really came down to 3 primary themes that would serve as our North Star as we guided our partners, our employees, our 120,000 volunteers, and all of the incredible supporters across the country in what Team Rubicon hoped to accomplish. The first element was we want to remain and we want to be a pillar in American communities across the country. So what does that mean? It means that we have to have volunteers across the country in the major cities. They have to be trained, they have to be capable and equipped to be able to do the things that the nation is going to require in these times of natural disaster. The second pillar was being present and being able to serve communities long after the disaster fades. We knew with Rebuild down in Houston that we wanted to continue to be able to put people back in their homes. We wanted to be able to reach out and understand how we could serve the community better by understanding their needs, and that served as the baseline for our client services. Additionally, we wanted to be able to resource and launch into these smaller communities across the country that were experiencing what we called low attention disasters. Now, obviously, COVID changed all of that, and we're seeing, and you'll hear from some of the panel members about the incredible things we've done, that we have been able to do that, but there is much more to do. And the final pillar, and the one that is probably most important today, was that we never wanted to stop imagining how technology could enable Team Rubicon to do things better. We wanted to build the systems that would create standardization and process and procedures to allow us to do things better in the field. We wanted to make sure that we could gather the data that was going to allow us to make better decisions real time, and then in after action reports, be able to understand what we had done and what we'd accomplished against our goals and how we could do them better. And third, we committed to sharing everything that we'd create so we could create a tide that lifts all boats. These systems, the innovation, the technology that we're putting behind it would help us to do things better in the nonprofit space. Now, I'm not here to tell you that technology is the ultimate enabler, because we all know it's the men and women who put on this gray shirt and head out into the field. We know it's the incredible investors and donors who believe in us and give us the materials that we need to successfully prepare the team before the game. And if we do our job properly as the members of this panel, we're going to find that we know we've accomplished the right things if we're able to do those 3 core missions. If we're able to make sure that as volunteers, your experience in dealing with our technology is as seamless as your favorite app on your cell phone. We'll understand that we've done our job if we're able to take the information that we have, share that data, use that data to understand what we've done and how we can do it better. And finally, I think, and obviously the most important, it's ultimately measured by the impact we have in the communities we serve. When we look back on all of this technology, and we'll continue to refine it, our final measure of success is if Team Rubicon can serve communities by mobilizing veterans to continue their service, in communities across the country after natural disasters or in humanitarian crises. So again, technology is just an enabler, and another thank you to you. I'll go ahead and turn it over to each of our panelists to be able to tell you their story, to be able to tell you what they're doing and what they envision doing. And we'll start first with Kate Browne.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kate Browne, as Art mentioned. I'm the technology product manager on our tech team based out of the National Operations Center in Dallas. I started as a donor, actually, back in 2012, and then became a volunteer in 2013. I started as an intern in 2015. So I want to talk to you about the way that we approach how we adopt and configure and iterate on the technology that we're leveraging as an enabler for everything that we do, and really how we put that in context and how we think through every change that we make and every tool that we put in front of everybody in all our offices and remote and in the field. So on some level, we really approach technology in the way that we approach everything we do as an organization, which is to be not afraid to start building something sometimes before we necessarily have all of the things that we need to do that in a traditional sense, and then put it in the field and break it and take it back and have an honest conversation, being honest with each other and ourselves about what's working, what's not working, and start investigating that and be ready to start rebuilding it as we go. As we've grown over time and in size, that's definitely, we've refined our approach to that, and it's become far more thoughtful, and we're diving deeper into everything that we do and how we lay out what's in front of us, how we think through a problem, and then how we take in and iterate based on feedback. But I think our approach to everything of build, break, build it again, serves us well and allows us to remain flexible and iterate rapidly, especially in the environment that we're in right now. For example, we're looking at longer timelines on building things and technology systems than we were a year ago, 2 years ago, even 3 years ago. But then COVID happens and we say, how can we adjust, and how can we adjust rapidly? And it's really that commitment to saying, we're 80% there, we're going to go, we're willing to break it, and we're willing to say, this is what broke, how do we address fixing that? As Art mentioned, tech is an enabler, and it can be an extraordinary one. It's not a replacement for a process. So what technology can do is unlock the door to endless possibilities, but you have to be ready to adopt it. And so over time, that's really changed for us. As an example, 5 years ago, I was an intern, and the task in front of us was moving 60 people to Nepal. And the way we did that was with a whiteboard and a bunch of tape and some markers. And that works when there's one person doing it. When you have 10 people doing it, that starts to fall apart. And now when you have thousands of volunteer leaders and 120,000 volunteers in front of you, and you're trying to put thousands of people on the ground to support communities across the country, you need more sustainable and scalable tools, not only to get that job done, but then to be able to communicate what we did and what that impact was. So as we look at everything that we build, right now we're in an environment where we're building almost everything in one technology system that we're customizing as we go. And we're looking at things as individual products. So as an example, we might say, hey, we're going to this functional team first. We're going to look at logistics. But as we look at logistics, because we have systems in place now that have enabled the automation of processes that we worked very hard to build on paper and execute through blood, sweat, and energy, we're able to be more thoughtful about it and say, okay, I not only want to be able to track a truck and I want to be able to track a trailer, but I want to be able to attach those two things. But on deeper levels than that, we're able to look across functional areas and say, hey, if I tug on this string for logistics, what does it pull on in finance? What does it pull on in mobilization? As an example, we move volunteers all over the country to all over the world to respond to disasters. But for that volunteer, for the mobilization team that needs to move those gray shirts, and for the logistics team that has to move a truck, sometimes those two things have to be connected. And how are we tracking those things? And then we were able to think through the layer of, how does this experience look for a volunteer? We have someone who's very excited and wants to get out and make an impact in their community. How do we connect them with the homeowners in need? How do we connect them with the communities that need the assistance? And how do we ensure that that gray shirt knows what's going on and has the information that they need along the way? So what the technology does for us over time is unlock more doors. When we started out, we were just a handful of people in one room together. And as we expanded in size, sometimes those functional teams can end up, from 5 to 50 people, and everybody's in a separate room diving really deep into how do we execute this functional area. And the technology becomes an enabler because it starts to open the doors between them, and it starts to push the entire organization into a larger room where we can say, okay, now things are starting to connect. We've got these 3 teams in here, let's pull this other function in with it. And we're able to look at not only how do we dive in on how we execute this function, how we report on it, how we ensure that we're delivering the assistance that's needed. But for the volunteers who really do the work in the field, how are we saying, when you sign up as a brand new volunteer, we get you where you want to go so that your time is spent delivering the assistance that you want to be delivering, or delivering impact to the organization, doing a job that you're passionate about. And I will turn it back over to Art so that everyone else can dive in on specifics.
Great. Thanks, Kate. And Kate is obviously very humble, but some of the big points that she brought out there, technology is an enabler. It's not a process. We really care about the experience of the gray shirt. The team that you see in front of you wants to understand what you're doing. And I think that analogy of how we unlock more doors, how do we create more possibility for this organization as it moves forward? One thing I forgot to talk about was kind of the rules of the Greyshirt chat here. On whatever medium you're on, be it Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, go ahead and type in any questions you might have. We'd encourage you to do that now. We're going to go about 10 minutes or so with each of our panelists, and then we'll spend a bunch of time in the backside answering those questions that you might have. So with that, I'll turn it over to our industry partner and Greyshirt, Kevin Scully, to tell a little bit about his journey as a member of our team and a critical enabler. Over to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Art. Appreciate it. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I think May here is my 2-year anniversary of being a Greyshirt. So proud to support the organization. Proud to be a Greyshirt. Really, talk a little bit about the background and kind of digital transformation and what that really means. I think it was early 2018 that Microsoft had introduced us to Team Rubicon and talked about the need for a digital transformation. And by the time I'd been introduced or brought along, we were into the execution phase, start to plan and execute and what's going to happen. But when you talk about digital transformation, it really means some different things to different people, different industries. It's a bit of a buzzword right now. In the financial services industry, you can be talking about certain fintech applications for the clients, online banking, website overhauls. For some industries, it just means changing the strategy or the process, the way of doing things. For others, it's more tech related, where it's upgrading old systems. For Team Rubicon, it was really what Art was talking about. It's all about the gray shirt, right? So it's enriching that customer experience, the gray shirts experience. It wasn't just about upgrading or changing the systems. That was part of it, but that wasn't the sole focus. So it was about consolidating some of the systems, implementing an enterprise solution so that when you grow from, and I think when we first started, it was 80,000 volunteers, or 100, 110,000, put a system in place for when you're 1 million+ volunteers, right? As you continue to grow that enterprise solution, right? in again, digital transformation for Team Rubicon, eliminating some friction where it's a challenge for the users that are trying to organize the efforts, and using the technology, as well as the gray shirts who are trying to raise their hand and get out there and help the communities, right? And then enable ways of really getting to know the gray shirts, right? How can they help? What's important to them? What's going to create a great experience for the gray shirts? So that was really when we put our arms around digital transformation. That's what we started to think about, right? And so I think I first came down to the NOC in Dallas in April of 2018. Met with Raj and Kate and Nicole Green, and could really feel in those initial conversations the passion around Team Rubicon, really the passion around gray shirts, around volunteering, around helping communities, and certainly a lot of cursing and swearing in the meeting, which was awesome. I'm a small town Wisconsin guy, so I'm like, I'm going to get along great with everybody here. So when we started to work with those folks and get into the weeds a bit, a lot of different systems. Raj was still new to the organization. He was trying to get his arms around all the different solutions that are out there. And, understandably so, you got a group of highly motivated individuals that nothing's going to stand in your way of accomplishing the mission. So a little technology solution isn't going to stop you. You find the workaround, and people have been doing that, and you're getting a lot of different systems that were getting the job done, right? But it's time to, again, to consolidate and take a look at that. And then, understanding from a project perspective, the gray shirts are our widget here, right? I mean, that's our product. We can't improve the production of our widgets to make it better. We really got to improve the entire volunteer experience to better achieve the success for both Team Rubicon in the communities that we're ultimately trying to serve, right? We talked in this initial meeting around the users, and what role change management would play in this digital transformation, right? Change management is, who's going to be the champions, who's going to carry the message forward, who's going to be the naysayers that are going to be slow to adopt or not adopt at all. How do we manage that change? My initial reaction was looking at that, and once I signed up to be a gray shirt and I saw kind of the hoops you jump through, and then I saw what was being done to manage a particular operation, I was saying to myself, if we do anything here, it's going to be a win, right? But it wasn't that simple, right? It was really about, it wasn't just about technology changes. It was about, trying to find that data, the interactions, the experiences, be able to capture that to enable and truly inspire the gray shirts to keep coming back for more and want more and want more, right? Certainly initial impressions, I was impressed by the leadership team, a lot of interaction with Art and Raj, their dedication, the ability to rally folks and convey the goals and objectives. And they think huge. And I think everybody at Team Rubicon does. You just think really big. So it's just as we're about to high five each other for a milestone, and we did that, right? It was Art and Raj or others, leaders coming back saying, okay, I got this next idea, right? And it was buckle in. At first, it seems impossible, but you start to chip away and work away at it. And really, some of the first impressions of the group. And then Art had mentioned that the goal here was, to build something that all nonprofits can use, nonprofits with volunteer base could use, right? So Microsoft wanted to put some solution out there that others could grab and implement and be up and running, and use Team Rubicon and this digital transformation as a launching ground. So we had the challenges of, what's specific to TR and what's specific to the masses, and be able to pull that out. And we've developed an accelerator that is out there for other nonprofits to use. So if you can you jump to that first slide that I had? So here's kind of the picture of what we had in mind of this journey of the gray shirt, right? And really have an understanding of the different points of where we may be able to implement some technology. And in our first phase, it was really just building the foundation, right? It was about the gray shirt, but let's identify. So I'm talking kind of the left of the disaster event, identify the gray shirt, the skills, when can we easily mark them as deployable, allow the gray shirts to self-manage and make it easy to raise their hand, and really focus on that engagement of getting folks invested in the technology we're going to put out there, invested in this mission around Team Rubicon, right? And make it easier for folks. in the second phase, where you kind of look to the right of the disaster event, you know, a lot of that is around the mobilization, the operations plan, the execution, right? Allowing us to pinpoint the gray shirts exactly where they were as it relates to a particular disaster, what skill sets they had, other demographics, to be able to tap them right on the shoulder to say, hey, we really need you folks here. And by the way, we've got some new functionality that allows you to tell us, one, if you can be there, but when exactly you can be there, make that a little bit easier, right? Some of the things, you know, as we've gone through this, it isn't on this map, obviously, the COVID response, right? And so to be agile, to come up with, you know, the initial thought is, you know, enabling gray shirts to help their neighbors. And I had heard it a lot of times over, you know, never self-deploy, never self-deploy. Well, except when there's a national, you know, nationwide pandemic around COVID, right? Then it was, hey, we need neighbors to help neighbors. We need people to essentially self-deploy on this, to get out there and do what they can, and then log that information in the platform to be able to report that back, so that we can work with our partners, as we're doing now. The next phase of this is really that partner portal, where there's other organizations out there that want to leverage the gray shirts and the tremendous talent and motivation that you all have, and partner you up with their constituents, and again, continue to just help and be there for your neighbors. If you want to flip to the second slide quick, I'll talk about just the agility of this project. And Kate had mentioned a bit about it, these iterations. Really, that was a focus. It came through right away for me, is this is a hell of a group that is incredibly motivated. And if we can't pivot and move as quickly as Team Rubicon can, we're going to fail them, right? So we're used to this agile methodology of produce something, get it in front of you in short term, and get the feedback and then adjust, right? So we're thinking big, we're starting small, and we're changing quickly. I remember at our first user acceptance testing out in Denver, and user acceptance testing is when we put the software in front of folks, we put the technology in front of the users, and we get a chance to get that feedback. And it usually happens, you know, right before go live. So, you know, I think we were a couple of weeks before go live, and we're out in Denver, and Art was talking about the CIA and how they used to sabotage the enemy's weapon manufacturers, and that they would point out all these little nuances of the weapon, the particular weapon, that, oh, it's too small, it's not green enough, it's not, you know, whatever this stuff was, to slow down the production so the weapon didn't get out the door to get used against you, right? So as he's applying that to what we're about to do in UAT, is, you know, not get bogged down in, this isn't quite right, this isn't perfect, this is whatever. Hey, this is good. It's a step up from what we have. It's going to consolidate some systems. It's getting us there, and we're going to build on it, right? And so as we're in that UAT session, we came across one of the dashboards, and Jonas, who's here on the call with us as well, thought, you know, he's like, wouldn't it be cool if users could just find these events themselves, right? As we've got people that are in different locations, or maybe on vacation, and they want to help out or whatever, but yeah, we'll go to a website and just sort on this stuff quick and see these events and be able to raise their hand and get involved in them, right? And again, around that whole gray shirt customer engagement, right? So to quickly pivot as these ideas come up and to get them deployed in short order was, you know, it was really neat to see. It was cool. It just goes to show the types of leaders that you have at Team Rubicon, and they're always thinking about that gray shirt experience. So, you know, I certainly want to say that, you know, Wipfl is all in with Team Rubicon. It's been a fantastic experience. My team at Wipfl is the envy of the rest of our organization, because we get to use this cutting edge technology and work with fantastic, incredibly motivated and fun individuals such as yourselves. So I certainly want to say thank you on behalf of myself. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never come across a group like this, so I'm having an absolute blast. I'm excited to be here, and really thrilled to be to continue to help you folks, and myself included as a gray shirt, you know, move towards more technology and helping our communities in the future. So I'll pass it back to you, Art. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. And again, a lot of great words from Kevin. He always adds a ton of value in everything. Remember that swearing is good. You know, widgets are a big deal, you know, and I think, you know, we'd be doing ourselves a disfavor if we didn't recognize a couple of major widgets. You heard Kevin mention the name Raj Kamachi, our CIO and CTO. The guy has been a catalyst for incredible change across the entire organization. And it's not just with respect to technology, it's respect to, our cultural attitude, how we conduct ourselves, how we listen, how we discuss, how we unearth value and put it into work. And he's also assembled an incredible team. We've also got some fantastic industry partners in addition to Wipfl. Microsoft has been a key enabler of this, and you'll see it's the backbone of everything we're doing from a technology perspective. So special thanks to our Greyshirt evangelist up in Seattle, Jeremy Pittman, if you're on, and Justin Spellhog, two Marines that have been, beating the drum about what Team Rubicon can do across this nation. I think another incredible widget that we have out there, and a person who's had incredible impact, not just in the Northwest Territory, but across the country, is Jonas Reynolds. And we'll let him contribute a little bit more to this story. Over to you, Jonas.
Hey, thanks, Art. So I'm TR's director for the Northwest Territory, but what I'm doing right now is supporting all of our current operations, specifically low-risk operations across the country. And I'm excited to share with you guys today and hopefully lend a little bit of historic perspective on how we got to this point, specifically around how we manage operations and mobilize Greyshirts, or our members, as we call them. So my journey at TR started in 2012 as a volunteer in a Greyshirt. And it was right around the time when Superstorm Sandy was approaching New York City. And after that hurricane hit, we launched Operation Grease Lightning, which this operation was our biggest operation to date. We put 350 Greyshirts on the ground. And back then, TR's technology systems, it was literally a spreadsheet and some phone trees out there. We look back on it and trying to gather data and metrics and impact. It's really impossible, and it's shared within the stories of our members that went out there, but we simply didn't have these systems in place back then to actually manage it. So coming out of that operation, as an organization, we really embraced technology, and we dedicated ourselves to the principle of innovation in this organization. And it was a really good thing that we did that, because in 2017, we were ravaged by hurricanes across the country. And in a couple of months, Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Maria hit Florida and Houston, Texas, and Puerto Rico. And it really took a combined collective effort of hundreds of Greyshirts on the ground to go out there and serve homeowners and people who had lost everything in that disaster. And that's where the grit really happened on the ground. What we didn't always see was behind the scenes, there were 15 staff members at our National Operations Center in Dallas, Texas. And these guys worked tirelessly to mobilize over 1,700 Greyshirts onto the ground to these hurricane ravaged areas. And the way we did it this time was essentially like spreadsheet 2.0. And it was this crazy Frankenstein mixture of formulas, conditional formatting, and quite frankly, it was genius in its level of creativity. It was also massively complex to the point that we actually broke the spreadsheet and exceeded the maximum number of cells that you can have on there. And if you guys know anything about that, it's like a cajillion cells that you have to build out to break a spreadsheet. But we did it. And what we found ourselves doing was, like Kate said, stuff that we had done in years past, filling up giant whiteboards full of flight manifests, personnel movements around the country. And the really sobering thing was, during this whole experience, we failed a lot. And we failed in living up to our standards and our commitment to our Greyshirts to communicate effectively to them. And more times than not, Greyshirts would get dispatch notifications hours before they were supposed to get on a flight, or not at all. And ultimately, we got the mission done out there. But coming out of that operation, or those series of operations, we really did some soul seeking. And what Kevin talked about with the digital transformation, that's really where that idea was born. And we dedicated ourselves to this new vision as an organization. And over the last couple of years, we've been pursuing it diligently. Even a couple months ago, we were piloting this new operations management and mobilization system, which is based in Microsoft Dynamics. It's hosted within a Microsoft environment. And we applied it to a really small wildfire response in Talkeetna, Alaska. And we only had about 30 gray shirts on the ground. But to pull this pilot off, we engaged a full national mobilization team, as well as the developers and our friends over at Wipfl. And most importantly, we had a bunch of grit-filled gray shirts on the ground ready to try out this system. And what came out of this was literally hundreds of bugs, enhancements, features that we wanted to see built in. And we owned up to it. We went back to the drawing board and we redeveloped the system. And in early February, we rolled it out. And in early February, we did not expect an international pandemic to happen. We didn't know that COVID-19 was going to be like this. And the system that we rolled out was really scoped towards small local operations. But what we did is we adapted again, and we did it really rapidly. And over a couple of weeks, we developed a system that essentially allows 1,500 leaders across the country to communicate across departments and functional teams, across geographies, and all kinds of operational commands. Right now, today, we have 85 simultaneous operations happening in TR. And even on our busiest of years, we may get 10 operations that are happening at one time. We're going to do more deployments. We're going to put more gray shirts on the ground right now in the next couple of weeks than we did in all of 2019 alone. And we're going to do it with fielding new capabilities out there that we've never tried before. And in really real terms, what this is literally millions of meals delivered to people, tens of thousands of pieces of PPE handed out to our first responders or medical professionals on the front line. And like Kevin said, standing up a system for neighbors helping neighbors to make it simple and easy for gray shirts to go in there and log their activity. And literally thousands of instances of people just helping each other. And sometimes it's as simple as just delivering a meal to a neighbor or checking in on them. So I guess what I'll kind of wrap this up with is this whole thing that we're doing, it's a journey. It doesn't have an endpoint. If we're lucky, then this whole process that we're going through doesn't end. We just keep iterating and getting better on top of it. And what I'd say to the rest of the audience out here, I know that we have a ton of gray shirts joining us. Thank you for choosing us to serve with. But most of all, thanks for serving in your communities. And if you're joining in and you're not a gray shirt, it literally takes a couple of minutes. Sign up. You'll thank yourself for it later. And I hope to see you guys in the field. Thanks, Art.
Thanks, Jonas. And again, special thanks to you, Jonas, Kate, and Kevin, who've spoken so far. I think it's really important as we go through this journey that you understand the people on the screen are here to make your experience better. You know, that is what our mission is. That is what will gauge our success. So again, we appreciate you participating. We also appreciate the feedback and some incredible words from Jonas. You know, I'm struck by the fact that, you know, 85 operations, and in the next few weeks, we'll deploy as many people as we did last year. And it's not with whiteboards and tape and Excel files that have reached capacity limits and are broken. It's done because of a result of the inputs our volunteers have had, the time the staff has put in, and our partnership with people. So simply incredible. You know, one of the things we've heard a lot lately in these past few weeks, as we've, you know, dealt with this newest and unexpected disaster, this pandemic, was the real trick is, you know, don't make simple things complex, you know, make the complex things simple. And our hope, again, is that what you're seeing is something that's more intuitive and more engaging. To Jonas's final point there, you know, go to www.teamrubiconusa.org and sign up. You know, that entire thing is part of our system. And our hope is that your journey to get this shirt and meet us in the field is simple and seamless. With that, you know, it's not just about, you know, what we're doing today or what we did yesterday. It's about what we will do and can do tomorrow. With that in mind, our organization made a giant pivot from the staff perspective on May 14th, when we knew we were going to, everyone was going to transition to work from home, and we knew we were going to have to be able to do incredible things despite the fact that we were apart. We knew that the organization had to be cross-functional, and we shifted to what we called task forces. These task forces would have members from across the organization, people with different skills and from different departments that would come together to solve the big challenges in front of us. But there was one that we hadn't envisioned and we didn't have, and it was called visibility and synthesis. And we had to find someone who would be able to assemble the right team, put together the right vision, take what we have and make it better, and be able to communicate it to our staff of 170, to our volunteer leaders of 1,400, and to the 120,000 members that wear this shirt and are ready to go. So I'll turn it over to Dennis Clancey to talk about that journey.
Thanks a lot, Art. Hi, everyone. I'm Dennis Clancey, Team Rubicon's disruptor in residence. Over the last several weeks, that has meant that I've had the opportunity to work with a couple of different task forces, and Art mentioned visibility and synthesis. COVID definitely posed a unique opportunity for Team Rubicon. And so early on, we recognized a need to shift a few things. As Art talked about, we created some new task forces to align around this effort. For visibility and synthesis in particular, we were charged with creating a clear picture of this pandemic and really all threats out there. We knew that we couldn't lose sight of all the things we normally do, those core ops missions, responding to tornadoes, floods, and the like. And so we need to create a good picture of what need was out there that was measured against where the greatest need was. But we also had this very aspirational thing to get in front of it. How could we start to anticipate what sort of needs would come down that we could start building capabilities for, that we could pre-position resources for? A big part of Team Rubicon's effort is to get in front of some of this. One of the hallmark products that the task force created was the COVID-19 dashboard. I'm going to show that in a second here, but it's a very complex tool that I'll invite all of you to take a look at. We're really proud of it. It's linked to our website. It's open to the public because we want to share the information it contains to all organizations, all people trying to get a sense of what this pandemic looks like, and also a clear picture of what other threats still exist out there within the United States. Can we put up the slide? I'm not even going to start to go through all of the random functionality of this tool. It's very impressive. I was on a call last night with Ed Amrine, our volunteer. He's an Esri professional who developed this, and Adam Martin, who now chairs the Visibility and Synthesis Task Force. And in an hour, we couldn't go through everything that this offers, but I just wanted to flash it up real quick. You got the link there. It's teamrubiconusa.org/COVID-19 dashboard. Has a wealth of information that allows us to layer several pieces of data and have it geographically located so you can zoom into a community and understand the various dimensions at which that community will get stressed from particular threats. Thank you for showing that. We always talk about being a data-driven organization, and part of operational decision-making has always been looking at the social vulnerability index. We've gone really far this time in terms of looking at other data that can give us indicators of where the greatest need is. The framework we used for the COVID-19 pandemic were community lifelines. It's a FEMA framework. There are 7 community lifelines. Basically, they're the most fundamental services in a community that, when stabilized, enable all other aspects of society to function. Those are safety and security, food, water, shelter, health and medical, energy, communications, transportation, and hazardous materials. The 2 we focused on early on were food, water, shelter, and health and medical. FEMA had already rated the country as yellow. That's stabilizing for health and medical. And then we also knew that food insecurity was a huge thing. That gave us the opportunity to start to dig. There's a preponderance of information out there, of data sets that we can pull into this Esri platform, ArcGIS, to start to identify where the greatest risk is. So we weren't necessarily just looking at the prevalence of COVID cases within a community. We were also looking at the number of beds within that community, the number of medical providers. What does obesity, heart disease, and diabetes already look like within that community? So we understood some of those complicating factors that could, adversely affect the degree to which COVID would impact that community. So there's a ton in there. I encourage you to go in there. I want to share with you a couple of successes. One key one, talking to the fact that Visibility and Synthesis wanted to get the organization in front of the disaster. One of the requests we got from the current operations task force was to identify the highest risk counties. And a few weeks ago, we identified 5 that we wanted current ops to reach out to proactively to see what Team Rubicon could do to help them. Early in COVID-19, we were getting flooded with a ton of requests for assistance to our organization, but part of our mandate as humanitarians is we always want to respond where there's greatest need. And so what about all those communities out there that don't know about Team Rubicon yet? We wanted to find those communities. We wanted to reach out to them and establish relationships. So there were 5 counties. One of them that we reached out to was Wachita Parish in Louisiana. They didn't have any requests for us at the time, but 3 days later, when a tornado went through that community, they reached out to us and asked us to help in their community. You know, you can imagine the clarity the Greyshirts had in responding to that community. They had so much context already for the degree to which that community was already stressed, what needs it had. This is something that, you know, can improve the way that we have clarity in the reasons why we're responding to different places. I want to leave you with a few thoughts, right? You know, I got a little nostalgic when Kate Browne mentioned her mobilization whiteboard. I'm very grateful for that whiteboard because it got me to my first deployment to Nepal back in 2015. I'm also equally grateful, Kate, that we're not still using it. But at any rate, you know, I didn't give my my background at the start. I started as a Greyshirt 2015 with that deployment. I've worked in field operations and started our National Operations Center back in 2016. It's been an amazing journey. You know, one of the things that Team Rubicon doesn't just talk about, but it actually does, is it's always trying to update and make more sophisticated the picture of need and demand that's out there. And it's always looking for new ways to go after it. As Art said, you know, one of the pillars of our strategy is that we never stop imagining how tech can transform what we do. This dashboard that I just shared about you, it's not just about COVID, right? We're going to look at how, you know, COVID has challenged us to look at disasters in a new way. And we're going to leverage that to improve everything that we do. We may have seen a novel crisis in COVID-19, but that's going to challenge us to look at everything that we normally do in novel ways. I think, you know, one of the things that makes us successful as an organization is I don't ever hear someone, you know, when we respond to another tornado, let's just do it the way we did last time. We could just do it that way. Someone's always asking, how do we do it better than the last time? And I think that's made all the difference at Team Rubicon, and it will continue to. So thank you.
Cool, thanks, Dennis. And again, you know, some great points out of there. I mean, the data, if you have the time, you know, dive into that information, understand it, as Dennis mentioned, it's open to everyone. So other agencies can look at it, take a look at it, you know, make some decisions, understand where we are. So, you know, that's a really big deal. And again, all of those layers, explore it, understand it. It's kind of the heartbeat of our decision making. And finally, you know, his piece about, you know, nostalgia is awesome in reflection. It tends to be a real burden in the field. So I think the one thing that we've seen a lot of here is, you know, we're not building things so we can do things the way we've always done them. We're building them in a manner where the Greyshirts who give us their time and their energy can have the most seamless experience and have the greatest impact on the people we're serving in the field. Again, as a reminder here, go ahead and chat in your questions. We got quite a few of them in front of us, so excited about this. And what I will do is tee these up for the folks. So the first one will go to Kate Browne. Jason asks, how can we volunteer on the technology side of the organization? And then I'll turn it over to Kevin Scully, because I think it's probably worth talking a little bit about how volunteers were an important part of the UAT he mentioned. So over to you, Kate.
Thanks for the question, Jason. So I think there's more than one opportunity, but it sort of depends on how you want to provide or give your time to the organization. And so in the same way that we look at who needs the assistance that we're providing and how can we connect it in the most effective way, we want to ensure that if you're giving your time and sweat to help others after disasters, that you're doing it in the way that's most meaningful to you. So if you log into roll call, you've got a couple opportunities. One would be step up in a volunteer leader position, which are, again, we have thousands of volunteers who are operating in decentralized staff roles in local areas. So every territory has their own volunteer leader team, and every functional area has volunteer leader counterparts. There's also opportunities if you would rather operate in the field environment versus remote, you can do both. But there's training available online. Connect with your local leaders and talk to them and have a conversation and say, which again, those contacts are listed in roll call on the left-hand side if you're looking for your local contacts. But you could say, hey, I'm really into tech and I want to know how I can help. And they can start to connect you with, we need help here as a standing position. These are your opportunities in the field, or this is how we can pull you in for feedback on certain things as we build.
I don't know that I could have said it any better. Certainly, our UAT sessions, we look to pull in those local leaders. We look to pull in a lot of the most vocal and involved gray shirts to be able to get an appreciation of their impression of the process and the technology that we're putting in place. And so with each phase and each technology that we're deploying, when there is that impact to the gray shirts, we're looking to pull in and gather that feedback. So, to Kate's point, connecting with your local leaders, providing that feedback to them, because if we're not hearing about it, if we don't hear about it from you, then, we can't make the changes, right? So I think everybody's open to the feedback and wants to make this your platform that, again, makes you the best gray shirts, that gets you most engaged and fired up about helping the communities.
Thanks, Kate and Kevin. Here's a good question for you, Jonas, and it's probably a build on something you measured there. Michael asks, have you ever been on an op where technology was supposed to be an enabler, but you ended up spending more time than planned dealing with quirks, bugs, and fielding issues?
Yes. Next question. Yeah, like that happens all the time. I think one thing that we realize very close to home is a lot of our operations that we do are not in areas with great Wi-Fi and connectivity. They're out there in the boonies somewhere with, unestablished resources. And, it is like a headache at times. But what I would say is technology, it's getting better. It's helping us do more things out there. And at the end of the day, when we hit those roadblocks and, technology is a burden in the field, like we still have paper forms, we still have, personal communication. What makes TR really strong is beyond the technology, it's the gray shirts and it's the culture we share together, which we have a desire to solve problems in this organization. And as long as we hold that like close in our hearts, we overcome these challenges. And yeah, it's frustrating. Yeah, we want to office space, our computers, but we move past it and we get better.
And I think for you there, Michael, one of the great things about that is, Kevin mentioned the user acceptance testing we had. There are a lot of organizations that'll be paralyzed trying to get that last 5% to reach perfection. We're going to put it in the field. We're going to bend it, break it, and put it back together in the right way and make it happen, because that's what we owe the people who support those programs and mostly the survivors in the field. We got a great question here for you, Dennis. Wilson asks, any crowdsourcing techniques used, especially for poor rural areas where COVID-19 outbreaks and lack of food or medicine could be reported through, say, Twitter to find hotspots of needs?
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. So part of the effort that our team is doing, we have a dedicated team, we call the Lifeline team. It's actually pulling information. So they're looking for news articles, they're scouring social media and the like to find, how do we fill in the gaps between where there are clear data sets, and maybe how do we even create, how do we identify leading indicators where we, it maybe directs us in a direction to look. So we are incorporating that. It's a great suggestion. One of the things I didn't mention in my talk was that there is a feedback form also in the COVID dashboard, because we want, as people are using it, to send us feedback, whether that's positive or negative. Tell us how you're using it. Tell us what else you'd like to see there. One of the cool things it's crowdsourced that is included with the dashboard is crowdsourced photos. So when people crowdsource the uploading of photos after a disaster, that's one of the layers that you can zoom in on and actually see, photos that people have taken as a kind of preliminary recon in an area.
Thanks, Dennis, and thank you for that question. Here's a good question, maybe for Kevin, since you were out there. Can you provide any instructions that you had on how to reach out to neighbors appropriately during COVID-19 under this TR umbrella in the Neighbors Helping Neighbors program? How'd you get that information, and what did you do?
The information I got honestly just came from, word of mouth of us working on it and getting out there and looking at, roll call and reviewing, the suggestions out there. I personally, I was just thinking, how do I do this so that it's not threatening, where people are, scared to go to their doors and things like that, right? I just canvassed my neighborhood with my 2 young boys, so they're not terribly threatening or intimidating. And we brought our dog along, and we'd been on a number of walks and just know where there's, just some more elderly folks in our neighborhood, and went around and started rapping on doors and having a conversation with people. And folks before, where you'd walk by and kind of wave to them and never really stopped and chatted. It was an opportunity to do that, an opportunity to share a little bit about Team Rubicon and the mission and what we do, but really connect with the neighbors and truly just, what can we do to help, right? If there's anything possibly that I could do, and I drop off a business card with the phone number on it, and if anybody needed anything, give me a shout. So I think there's lots of opportunities out there to specifically sign up for certain tasks and be a little bit more helpful, I guess, than what I was, as far as just checking in on people. Didn't have many people taking me up on it, but we'll continue to look around the neighborhood and look for opportunities to help out the neighbors.
Thanks, Kevin. And I think if Kevin mentioned roll call, go ahead there. You'll see the guidance. At a 10,000 foot level, the obligation we have as Greyshirts is, make sure that we're doing the right things for ourselves and keeping ourselves safe and our families safe. Make sure that the community we're serving, we don't introduce risk to them, and make sure that the community we return to, if it's something that's an operation, as an example, when we come back, that we're as safe as possible. Here's a good question for Jonas. How has technology specifically affected the selection, mobilization, and deployment of Greyshirts to COVID-19 response efforts? Many TR members have suggested that this is a very unique situation. How so?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So once upon a time, when we were vetting people for operations, you would literally have to look through somebody's profile and look at like 4 or 5 different points to see if they were eligible to go out. We built a system which connects to multiple data sets, and it's also highly adaptable, which when we started seeing, issues coming around from the CDC about where you should deploy to restricted counties, best practices, we were able to build deployable member segments in there pretty rapidly. And what that's done is literally cut hundreds of hours of time out of what we once upon a time would have had to do to this system, which it's not always realized by especially our leaders that are doing the vetting. It's still a huge lift to handle, but you look at this system compared to what it was a couple of years ago, and what we're doing right now would have been impossible even a year or 2 ago. So that's one of the ways that technology is greatly helping this situation out.
Yeah, and there's again, to link it to the previous question, there was a lot of, how do we find, the least at risk, personnel, which meant, they're below a certain age. age limit? How do we not early in the program, not deploy someone from a community spread zone to a non-community spread zone? And we saw that very early in March with Tennessee and the tornado responses. So a lot of complexity, but the answer really becomes simplified and accelerated so we can meet need quickly. Here's a question for you, Kate. Is TR looking at ever introducing a mobile device application to create a platform for reaching more volunteers and increasing Greyshirt signups, or perhaps providing another medium to provide training?
Definitively, yes. I mean, I think that's always been the dream, right? Even when we were on a whiteboard, it was, what can you imagine how game changing this will be when we have our own app and we can say, all right, I just click 2 clicks on my phone and now I'm registered for an op. And I think this sort of on some level ties back to the question that Jonas just answered, because that's really a prime example of how we get through or get to where we're going piece by piece, right? Because along the way, we always hit things we couldn't have imagined. So our mobilization has always been extraordinarily manual on the back end from an admin perspective. It's taken a lot of resources to get people where they needed to go. And we know that over time, it's been quite painful for volunteers, like to, over time communication wise and not knowing what their own status was. So as we looked to put that inside of a system, really the focus was on how do we make this as easy as possible for the Greyshirt who wants to get the field? How can we automate every step on the admin back end? But we hadn't imagined being in a situation where the volume was so high that it wouldn't be reasonable to ask a Greyshirt to do it 50 times in 2 days if there were 50 operations in their area. And so in an instant, it forced us to say, okay, we're considering both sides of this. What do we shift to ensure that someone clicks this button 1 time and is considered for all 50 of these opportunities? And so we know somewhere in that line, somewhere in that dream is a mobile app where you can find all the information that you need and get where you need to go and sign up for the operations and take your training. I think we're still laying a foundation to get there on some of those aspects. And so, yes, but it's coming.
So Kevin, are we on track to have our EMS on a phone?
I think that's part of that whole enterprise platform we signed up with for Microsoft, right? They've got those capabilities of the Power Platform and developing those apps in pretty short order, right? So it's prioritizing that and putting that up there on the list and getting to work on it. But yeah, absolutely, that's in the future, right?
So you heard it here, folks. Kevin Scully 2 years ago walked in and met the bad news bears. Now he knows, we're going to be in the World Series, smacking it out of the park, and we will get that mobile app out there sometime. So we're running up on time. So I'll finish it up really quickly with a note. Thank you, Brenda, to the folks that made this possible, Laura Silva and the team from Capabilities. She sends her thanks for using technology to add captions to the training videos in meetings so that I and other deaf and hard of hearing can be included to help our communities. Dennis has done the same thing in making sure that our dashboards are usable. So this is an inclusive environment. We know that everybody has a role. So we're going to move forward again. Technology is an enabler. It's going to help us be a part of the American communities. It's going to enable us to be, present for the full, long after the disaster fades. And, it's not a process. Technology is what's going to keep moving us forward. Hold us accountable to your expectations on that volunteer journey. Know that the people that are behind this have, nothing but helping as many survivors as possible in making the volunteer journey as seamless as possible for you. And once you get into the field, as rewarding as it can be. I'll finish where I started with a huge thank you to each of you, to the volunteers, to the staff, to our volunteer leaders, to the people who've reached into their pockets and supported our investments that have made all of this possible. We have a lot of work in front of us, but we've assembled the right team to get it done. Thank you, Team Rubicon. Thank you, everyone, for joining the Greyshirt chat, and thank you to our panelists for sharing the incredible vision and energy that you've brought to technology and making this machine run in a way that serves communities across the country. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.